Welcome to Bring Out Your Badass Self, a movement to break your negative thoughts and habits and instead focus on building each other up and encouraging fearless authenticity.
Each week, we will get vulnerable and share experiences alongside our guests and audience. Come rediscover your inner badass self.
Good morning, badasses. I am solo today. I do not have Sarah with me. She is on vacation, but that is okay. I am grateful to be here. I am so appreciative that she does this with me, and I am thrilled to see all of you. So please, as you come in, say good morning. Would love to see your sweet comments and visualize your faces. Good morning, Stephanie. So great to see you. Good morning, Eric. I love this. Good badass morning. This is my favorite, Eric. So how are you guys doing today? Let me know. We are covering an interview today. So we're talking about creating your own unique point of view. So super excited about this one because we are interviewing a woman named Rochelle Moulton. She is someone that I've actually kind of fangirled over in the past. So I am super excited to get into a little bit more. So I'll wait a few minutes before I kind of tell my story about Rochelle and just continue to before we are showing the video. So essentially what Sarah and I did is we knew she would be on vacation today. And we have a list of, folks that we are interviewing. So we went ahead and recorded this interview with Rochelle. So, hey, Bruce, good morning. Let's badass the shit out of this whatever. I love a good cuss word. You all know that, I'm sure. All right. So let me tell you a little bit about Rochelle Moulton. So she is, she's a solopreneur. A solo entrepreneur. And she has a robust coaching business, from what I know and what she's told us. And she has an incredible audience and phenomenal. And when I was introduced to Rochelle, I happened upon her, I believe, through Danielle Laporte or some other person I was following, and I found Rochelle, and I was immediately attracted to her. She had this like really bright website, very colorful, a lot of bright pink, like so bright pink, it almost looks red. And so immediately kind of like aesthetically, I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then I I started looking at her content, and I was just kind of immediately enthralled. And the reason is that when I was looking into working with her, and she's kind of evolved a little bit more to now focus purely on, solopreneurs, but she's always had this branding slant to her that is, I believe, really unique. And that's what really attracted to me here as a small business owner. My dad and I were starting our business, and I really believed we needed to do some branding kind of strategy or soul searching. And so we did acquire some products from Rochelle, and she, just like a lot of great content makers out there, she provides a lot of free stuff as well. So I have taken advantage of that over the years. Someone here is saying good morning, and I don't see you, but good morning. StreamYard is kind of weird, guys. I'm not sure why, but even if you've already gone and approved, sometimes I can't still see where you're coming from or who you are. So no worries in that regard at all. But So happy you're here. Thank you for joining us. I think you're really going to love this interview today when we're able to show the video. So, you all know that Sarah's not here, but I do have an amazing person backstage. Her name is Lindsay Diven. She works with Sarah and I on the marketing side. She is fantastic at what she does, and she is here producing for me today. So I don't have to worry too much about doing all of the stuff that Sarah usually does, which is awesome. So thank you, Lindsay. You're just the best. She's waving to me from backstage. So all right, so here's what I wanted to show you. When it comes to Rochelle Moulton, the person that we are interviewing today, one of the reasons why I love her so much is her messaging. She has the best brand, I think, to kind of lift you up. And so one of the things she has put together, and I'm going to post a link to this, but I wanted to show it because it is literally, this is a poster that I made from a PDF that she put together. So it is a huge, I just wanted to show you the size of this guy, right? And so this poster, I'm going to post a link after the show, but it's all inspiring, and it is Dare to be Unforgettable. That is what the poster is titled, and it has all these awesome quotes on it. So just wanted to see you that this is for real, because Rochelle was just so pleased to hear that I had actually kind of followed through and made the poster out of some content that she had provided. So I have that story, but in addition, I actually have another story that is, it is quite sad, but also really beautiful and meaningful. And Rochelle shared it with Sarah and I after our interview, and I did want to share it with you today. So Rochelle is a part of the content she puts out. She posted a PDF you could download, like a background for your computer screen, and you could download other brand content. And one of the things you could download was a poster. So I downloaded that poster and I uploaded it to Vistaprint and made myself one and framed it. And that is the poster I'm showing you. And that poster I've had for almost 10 years, I think. So the poster has followed me to all my different offices, and it has been, a point of inspiration for me. Now, Rochelle was thrilled to hear that. She didn't know anyone else that had made it into a poster. You just kind of put content out sometimes and you don't really know, what people are doing with it. So Rochelle was not aware. But when she heard that story, she was just so thrilled and was just so tickled to know that it was literally hanging in someone's office. She did receive at one point another piece of feedback around the poster. And like I said, the story is a little sad because it involves someone passing away. So what happened is she heard from a mother of a young woman. I believe she was in her 20s or 30s. She was far too young to pass away, but she had some form of cancer and was receiving treatment, and it was toward. So essentially what the story is that Rochelle got this email from the mom who said, I wanted you to know this. I just thought if this were something I had put out there, I would want someone to know this, that this person who had passed away was looking at her poster. She had it as her backdrop on her computer, and it was one of the last things she was looking at before she passed away. So Rochelle was incredibly touched. It was very bittersweet to hear that. I mean, it kind of broke her heart a little, and when I heard it, it gave me goosebumps. I can't even imagine what that would feel like to have your content be that important to someone that they were reading it as one of the last things they wanted to read, on this earth. So I find that also to be really beautiful, right? Because that's the ripple effect, right? That's how much something you put out there can touch someone else's heart, and can actually make a difference. So this couldn't save this woman's life, but it was that meaningful to her that she wanted those words that Rochelle wrote to be front and center for her during a really pivotal moment. So I found that really beautiful and wanted to share that with you all today. So I'm going to go ahead and have Lindsay play the interview. We will watch the interview, and then I'll come back on at the end. Please comment throughout. I'm really hoping for some interaction still. So I was hoping that you guys could just tell me a little story about a time when you just listened to your gut and took a step into the unknown. Because that's a lot of what Rochelle is talking about. So if you could comment today and answer that question, when did you follow your gut and just take a step into the unknown and it worked out for you? I would love to hear that. I mean, if it didn't work out, I'd love to hear that too, because there are times when it just doesn't work out. But, as I hopefully be inspired by Rochelle today, it's awesome when you hear those great stories. So I would love to hear some of yours after we are done with this interview. So feel free to comment throughout, and then we will talk and I'll read through comments after the interview. Thanks, guys. Looking forward to hearing what you think of Rochelle Moulton. Go ahead, Lindsay. Yeah, thank you.
I'd like to thank our guest, Rochelle Moulton, who has joined us today. And Kate, this is someone that you were introduced to, that you have introduced me to. Can you tell us a little bit about how do you know each other?
Yeah, definitely. So I started following Rochelle right after I started my business in 2009. I found her, I'm not sure how I found her, maybe through Danielle Laporte or Kate. I can't remember her last name though. But regardless, I was following someone and then I happened upon Rochelle and I just became kind of infatuated with her story and her brand. And I, at the time we were a startup and we didn't have a ton of budget for things like this, but I really worked hard to kind of create a little bit of budget to work with Rochelle a tiny bit. So we had an intro conversation, and then I bought one of her digital kits, and my dad and I used it to kind of further our brand at the time. And then I also downloaded a poster that she was giving away, and that poster has followed me to each of my work environments. So it has stayed with me since 2010, whenever Rochelle made it available. I'm pretty sure I downloaded it right away and I sent it off to Vistaprint and I made it into a big poster that I have in my office.
That's awesome. I love that so much.
I know. When I love something, I just go for it, So I did. So Rochelle, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. If you could start us off, tell us a little bit about you and what you do. That would be great.
That's awesome. I still have the visual of this poster on your wall. I love that. So thank you both for inviting me to talk to you. I guess in a sentence, what I do is I help soloists build vibrant authority businesses. And vibrant can have a lot of definitions. I think of it as a very alive, so that what we're doing is we're doing work that has a meaningful impact on a group of people that we care about. And the other thing that makes it vibrant is that you're earning enough. I'm using quotes intentionally because it's an individual definition. You're earning enough revenue so that you have the money, the time, and the flexibility to live the life that you've always imagined for yourself. So it's the happy factor, if you will, but it's so unique to each individual and their situation as to what exactly that's going to look like.
Yeah. And I know that you had some experiences along the way that sort of led you down that path. And so can you talk a little bit about that for our audience?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's funny when I think back about it because I've had so many little instances where I wasn't like everybody else. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to say that. I wanted to fit in, especially when I was younger. And I was working with all of these really brilliant people. And here I was from this little town, from this, kind of no-name university, working with all these brilliant people. And so I just tried to fit in. And then gradually over the course of my career, but it probably happened really fast towards maybe the end of my 20s, is that I realized that I wasn't exactly like them, and I wanted to be who I was. And so it was just like little things, like instead of a beige trench coat, I wore like a purple coat. I mean, it was like little things like that. But yeah, when it kind of all came together, I think, was when I had what I call my last job, like where I had a title and a salary and, all that kind of stuff. And my last job was actually with a Fortune 500 company. And I was leading a consulting practice. And when that job stopped, when that went away, it was, for me, it was that moment where I said, I am never going to be an employee again. And I had started my own business. I'd started 2 of them actually before that point. So I knew what that was like. I just didn't know what it was going to look like. And so I spent really the summer of 2007. I read every book I could find. I had like this giant stack that I kept bringing to the library when I was done with them. I was reading all of these books about, how to kind of self-help books, like how to pull yourself together. And then I was reading business books about brand. And I had a moment where I had been meeting with 2 different gentlemen actually who had 2 different firms, but they were doing the same thing on paper. Like their descriptions on their websites could not have been more alike. But when I met each of them, they were doing such completely different things. And I had that moment where I went, oh, this is the problem. Everybody's trying to fit into this box that we think we need to fit into in order to get clients, in order to maybe have employees, if that's your thing, for people to like us and want to hire us. And that's when I kind of started my descent into the world of brand. And really, I got so excited by it because I think of brand in this way as kind of the inside out. It's not that you have this vision of what your brand should be, but that it's who you are and who you want to serve. And then what we figure out is, how do we put ourselves in service to that goal in a way that's genuine, that's authentic, and that feels good to us.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I think many times, Kate, I know that you and I have talked about this before, but I think many times we can relate to not feeling like we fit in. I know that I've had that in the past as well. And so I'm curious a little bit more about your journey and how it is that you found your voice and how it is that you found the things that made you you, and how it is that you help people in finding them or discovering the things that make them them.
Yeah, well, to not go into too much detail, but hopefully keep it interesting. I guess what I would say, is, so I spent a total of 10 years in a big consulting firm. And when I first started consulting, it was like coming home. Like I found the ideal profession for me because it was, I know you know this, you each have things that you found in your career and you go, wow, I was made to do this. And I loved consulting. I was really good at it at a young age. I made partner at 31. And so I had all this unexpected success. I shouldn't say unexpected. I wanted it really badly and I worked really hard for it, but a lot of it came faster than I had expected that it would. And I felt very lucky in that. But what happened is, as I kept learning and I would connect with people who were my clients. And at that time, there weren't as many women in the profession, and clients were, the head client was usually male. The second in command might be female. The third in command might be female. And so I started to work with more women and realized, like, here's what they're dealing with in this big corporate environment. in a big consulting firm, I actually had a lot more flexibility than most of my clients did. But I still, like, I didn't feel like I could be myself. And I'm not going to blame that on the organization. I think that was on me because I felt like I wasn't as smart as, or I didn't have as, dramatic an education as they did, even though I had an undergrad degree and a graduate degree in finance. So it's, it was one of those moments of, I won't say imposter syndrome, but where you sort of doubted that. And then in the process of getting to partner, one of the things that happened is I kind of looked around and realized, oh, you do deserve this. You've done, you've built this business, you've mentored these employees, you've brought in these clients, you've in that life, you've billed a certain amount, right? Or you've sold a certain amount, and I deserve that. And that's when I started really feeling more of myself, like I'm valuable. And if they don't like something, that is just too bad. And it started small. But eventually I found that not even eventually, I was never suited for corporate politics, whether they're in a big firm or they're in an organization. I suck at playing corporate politics for myself. I was pretty good at helping clients navigate because I didn't have any emotional investment in that. That was kind of easy to see. But I just detested the games that were necessary. And it was kind of twisty sometimes, like trying to figure out what to do and who to talk to about this. And I was thinking that when I made partner, a lot of those things would just drop away. I don't know why I thought that. That was so naive. It intensified. So here I was with this beautiful corner office, a swanky job title, and I wasn't happy. And I wasn't happy because my talents weren't, even though I had gotten all these promotions and I got a second one right after that one, I didn't feel like my talents were truly appreciated. What it was about in those days was you had to bill a certain number of hours personally. But what I was good at, I wasn't interested in doing technical work. I was doing big change work, and I was leading these giant teams of people. And so I wasn't personally that billable, but I was managing millions and millions of dollars of revenue. And, they were like, well, Rochelle, you need to bill some more time personally. I'm like, I'm working 70 to 80 hours a week now. I'm producing hundreds of thousands of dollars of profit. And then the final straw for me was when they said, we want you to learn to play golf. And we want you to go take these guys out, the CFOs, the heads of HR, when you take them out on the weekends and go play golf. I'm like, yeah, I'm already working 70 hours plus a week. What I really want to do is learn how to play a sport that I don't care about so I can spend more time not doing what you really want me to do. So yeah, I just there was that. And then I had, during my journey there, I had run a particular practice. And so after that, I was running a geographic office, and they asked me to come back and basically carry the bags of the guy that took over the practice that I used to run so that I could learn more technical stuff. And I'm like, no, not doing that. Yeah. So that was all a process. And in a way, when I look back on it now, it didn't feel this way as I was experiencing it, but it felt like an unfolding, like, oh, I have value. And in those days, women were about 20% of the partners in the firm. So there were other women. I was not alone. But it was still relatively recent that a lot of women had broken in. They had, at that point, they had only named their first geographic office manager as a woman. So there was that, but it wasn't just about the gender. It was just that I wanted to do some things that I couldn't do there, that they weren't going to let me do. And I was freaking tired of asking for permission. So that's kind of how I got there. And at that point, and it took about 12 to 18 months as this was all kind of percolating. And I wound up with a partner coming up with this idea to start a new business. And so I left the big salary. I left the corner office. I left the theoretically swanky job description to do a startup with a partner. And I want to mention the premise, because this is part of what's related to that, is the premise was these were flexibly scheduled MBA women who had come out of the big consulting firms, but didn't want to work that way anymore.
Mm.
And and the genesis for that was that I kept getting called into these meetings with new moms who wanted to leave. And they wanted to leave because they could only work 40 hours. And so they were treated like second-class citizens because they weren't working the 60, 70, 80. And they kept inviting me and saying, Rochelle, come talk to these women, talk them into staying. And I would listen to them. And finally I said, you know what? I think you do need to leave. I said, I don't want you to. You have so much potential. You'd be amazing, but you're not going to be appreciated here in the way that you will be in the opportunity you're going to. And that's when it all kind of came together. And it was like, we need to try this. We need to create a firm where it's possible to have a life and do a really good job at running a business, or in the case of the consultants, serving clients. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing exercise.
Wow. One of the things that you mentioned that I want to come back to, and you came back to it a couple of times during, this journey, is the self-worth, right? The value that you find in yourself. It seems like so much wouldn't have been possible had you not been able to look inward and realize that you deserved what you were getting, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I will say I had some therapy too, which was really helpful in doing that. That was really helpful.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think it can be hard. It depends on, your situation in life, I suppose, but it can be hard when you're in an organization that is all about like sort of catching this ball, right? It's all about this thing. And I think my challenge was I loved the work so much. Like I really loved it. And to this day, there's nothing I love more than sitting down with somebody and, working through the problems, how you go about this. So I got my dream job and then it wasn't the dream anymore.
Right.
So yeah, that's the challenge. And I think the self-esteem thing, we all kind of have to find within ourselves. But one of the things I found really helpful was I started really looking closely at all the people around me. And I realized that everybody had a different set of strengths, weaknesses, passions, talents. And so did I. And that didn't make them wrong. It didn't make me wrong. And I think it was the genesis for where I eventually came out, which is we have to really embrace what is unique and special and treasured even about ourselves to find that happiness. Working in an environment, even though it's somebody else's dream that isn't yours, is not a recipe for happiness.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you believe, so I try to think about this from a place that isn't privileged, right? Because so I'm going to preface it, because there are people that have to work to literally make ends meet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so not that I want to exclude those people, but in general, do you believe that everyone should have that experience, that like you should feel like you were made to do something, or how great would it be if you do, right? Like,
yeah, I try really hard not to use should, like I'm on a should diet.
Okay.
But yeah, I like the second part of what you said, right? Which is how great would it be? Yes.
Right.
And I didn't come from a place of monetary privilege. In fact, it was the opposite. So yeah, I mean, I told myself I deserve that. I said that to myself over and over and over again. And I do believe everyone deserves that. And I think part of the problem is, aside from, just being stuck in a situation, is that we don't always believe we're worthy. Like we hear these messages about, oh, you want to get a good job. Well, here, let me give you like a little tiny example. So when I left my swanky job to start my company, I told a family member about it. And she said, oh, no. Well, maybe if it doesn't work, they'll give you your job back. And, and I was like, really? That's your comment to me? Really? But yeah, but that, I guess that's kind of the point, is that sometimes you just have to break out of conditioning, or you have to find that mentor or that example of someone who will help lift you up. Because I'll tell you, I had a lot of really great mentors along the way. And I give them a lot of credit for helping me to see things that I couldn't see by myself.
Do you think some of that helped you with the risk taking? Because one of the things that I tend to find is people get stuck in fear of, oh, but what did, like your friend, they said, okay, well, maybe they'll still give you a job. That's based on fear. And a lot of times that's why people are risk adverse. To even sometimes discovering their viewpoint or discovering themselves as well. What has been your experience there?
Well, I do have more of a risk taker gene than probably the average person. And I still look at it this way. It's like, I've been in some terrible places and I always come out of it. Somehow, either, I come up with something, someone else gives me a hand and helps to lift me up. The right thing happens, the right people come together. So I've just always been more of a risk taker. And in fact, sometimes I find it really challenging when I'm talking to someone who's afraid of risk. And they'll say, well, how am I going to know this is going to work? And my answer is, you don't. You have to try it and see if it works. And so now I want to make clear, when I left that big firm, I didn't just leave like without any money in the bank. I had been saving money. I knew I was going to do something. So I had I think it was about a half a year's pay in the bank at the time. And so it was still scary. Don't get me wrong. It was really scary, but I was so excited. And having that money in the bank, it made me a lot more comfortable. I would definitely risk manage. That would be my advice, is risk manage whatever your situation is. So what if the worst happens? How will you be prepared? What if the best happens? How will you be prepared? And then you just have to decide for yourself if you're emotionally ready to take that risk. And it's not always starting a new business. It might be just a little side hustle to see if you like it first versus, I burned a big bridge when I left. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been known to say, try, if you can, don't start your business while you're, unless you have the money, or, try to start slow while you're still working for someone else, because there's so much, my dad and I started our business, and it was soon after we had started that we kind of had wished that we had done so in a different way, that we had built up a little bit of a nest egg, that we didn't have to kind of invest, our own money into the business, and be taking away from our living money. Right.
Yeah. And when I left, we had a non-compete agreement. So that meant, and it was a little bit negotiable. Like, I got some clients taken off. So it wasn't like a terrible list, but it was pretty significant. It was my best clients. And you're not allowed to compete for any business in those clients for 2 years. And what had happened with people who left before is they just dropped those clients like a hot potato. And then 2 years later, they'd say, hi, here I am. We can talk again. But I read the fine print. It doesn't say we can't talk. It says I can't solicit business. So I had in addition to telling them that I was leaving and what I was doing, I had lunch with each and every one of them within the first 3 months. And I said, listen, I cannot solicit any business from you. I want to make that very clear. I can't go around the rules. I'm going to follow them. But I just want you to know that I really value our relationship. Let's stay in touch. If there's anything I can do for you, short of charging you for a project, I'm happy to do that. And guess what? I had some clients that were counting the 2 years more than I was. And when I also got lucky, I had a couple of clients who left and went to a new company where the non-compete didn't apply. But
Right.
those are the kinds of things that, again, that can help you manage risk. There's a lot of ways to manage risk when you decide that you want to do something new, besides burning the bridges, burning the boats.
Yeah. One of the things you mentioned also in what you said you had a lot of mentors along the way. I'm curious, who has energized you or inspired you along the way?
Oh, God, so many. The mentor that I remember most fondly, and he just passed away a few years ago, was his name was Don. I'll just leave it at Don. And he was the manager of the first consulting firm / office that I joined. I joined in Stamford, Connecticut, and he ran the firm. And he was kind of like my imaginary dad. Like I was like, oh, I wish he was my dad. So he was this tall, brilliant guy, and he did not suffer fools kindly. So what happened was the more senior consultants in the office didn't want to work with him because he would tell them what to do. I, on the other hand, came in knowing nothing. So I just sucked up every little bit of wisdom that he would give me. And it was amazing. And I only worked with him for a year before I transferred from Stanford to Chicago. So that year was probably the most impactful in my entire career. And I give a lot of that to him. There was also a woman in the office who ran another practice. And again, at this time, there weren't a lot of women in those roles. And she was really helpful in the things that I didn't think about. Like I went to her when I had a problem with my boss, and she talked me through a way to deal with it that would never have occurred to me. I had another mentor in Chicago, Gary Pines is his name. And he was just this amazing guy who was trained as an actuary, which is a very technical profession, but he was so good at managing relationships that they eventually put him in charge of that for the firm. And at the time it was controversial because we didn't have salespeople. It was believed that, you had to bill a big part of your time, but he was so good at this that they created this role for him. And he took me under his wing and taught me some of how he did it. I mean, I adapted it to my own style, but he was always a cheerleader, and not just for me, but for the other people in the office who were trying to do those kinds of things. You knew if you had a client kind of sticky wicket, you could go to him. It was really, really beneficial. I had another woman in my first full-time sort of professional job. And again, I didn't last there very long. It was an insurance company and it was so bureaucratic, but I loved her. Again, she was really tough. And I still don't know why, but she liked me and she gave me advice. She gave me some good assignments. Even though the place was really dull and the work wasn't very interesting, she gave me the best of what she had to give. And so it's always been a combination for me of men and women as mentors. And I've learned very different things from them. I had another mentor who really helped me to understand how to run a business. Like when I co-founded this business, I'd never run one before. And I knew what I didn't want to do from my big firm experience, but I'd never did any of those things. I didn't actually hire people. I mean, I did, but somebody else took care of all the details, right? I chose them, but I didn't do all that other stuff. I had never started a business from scratch. I didn't know about payroll, all of those things, and those little things that when you've run a business for a number of years, you take for granted, like, oh, you put the payroll taxes in a separate account, so they're there when it's time to pay them, like little things like that. So, I had a mentor with that as well. So I think it's important. Sometimes mentors magically appear in your life, like happy and ready to help you. And other times you kind of have to seek them out. And I've done both. Yeah.
And when you were in some of your earlier times, did you know that you were receiving mentoring? Like, was it or were you like just in this relationship, like with the guy in Connecticut? Like
Mhm.
you were soaking up this knowledge. Were you doing it with that strategy in mind, or were you literally just like, I gotta learn?
I don't think I was sophisticated enough at the time to be
Right.
that aware, but I knew that he ran the office, and I knew that he had all these clients, and I knew that he wanted somebody so he could offload some of those clients, and he wanted to train me kind of in his image. And I thought, I'm not going to get another chance like this. And there were two other people. They had different areas of expertise, but there were two other people at the same stage that they hired. So there were three newbies all together, and he wasn't doing that with the other two. And I thought, I may never have another opportunity like this. I will do whatever it takes. And of course, I loved it. So yeah, I worked a lot, but he was the guy who would say, "Go home now, go home. You need to have a life too. This will still be here tomorrow when you come back." So yeah,
I loved
it
that
was
you
really
soaked
special.
up, yeah, that you soaked up the mentoring or the knowledge, even in the places that you didn't enjoy at the moment, you still found value in it. And I think that that's important to, even if you're in a
Mhm.
job that you don't like right now, what can you at least get from it to help you with that next level? And so I loved that piece
Yeah.
of as you talked about that.
Well, and the other thing is, even if everything is horrible, like it's the most toxic environment you can imagine, there is still one thing you can learn. I did learn this in one situation, which is you learn how to deal with toxic. Not that you want to get used to it, but you have a skill and you start to recognize the toxicity when it walks in the door. So there's, I guarantee there is value in every experience, but hopefully the negative ones can be, blessedly short.
Yeah. Well, Rochelle, I want to leave our audience with some information. So I understand that you have written a book. Can you tell us a little bit about that book and how it is that you might be able to help our audience?
Yeah, sure. So the book is called The Authority Code: How to Position, Monetize, and Sell Your Expertise. And it's basically a primer. And if you buy the book, there's also a link to a free workbook, so you can actually go along with all the exercises in the book and fill them out for yourself. And it's basically, how do you take your expertise and create a vibrant business out of it? And so a lot of it, the front end of the book about positioning, is a little bit different advice about positioning. And one of the pieces I just want to mention, because it's so important, is to pick the revolution that you want to lead. And
Mm.
sometimes people go, "Oh, no, no, no. I mean, who am I
Yeah.
to lead a revolution? No, 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 no." It doesn't have to be the world revolution, but it can be it can be a quiet, soft revolution where you see this change that you want to help make in the world for a group of people that you really care about. And what happens, and the reason why that's so important, and it's not just about marketing and branding and attracting clients, it's also something that when times get tough, because they will at some point, you will go through a rough patch, that will keep you grounded and focused on what matters, which is, how are you going to get this change in the world? So yes. Do you have another question in there? I got so excited about this. I'm not sure I answered your whole question.
No, that was exactly it. And so you told us about what the book is about. And so it's how to position and monetize your expertise. And so it's really focusing on sort of discovering who you are and then also making money off of it as well.
Well, and the idea behind it is that a lot of people in this space don't like to sell. They're really uncomfortable with selling. And
Mm.
the idea behind building authority is that in the expertise space is then your ideal people come to you. So you're having sales conversations where you're deciding if you want to work with them versus going out and
Mm.
pitching.
Mm.
And that's a process. We don't become an authority overnight, but by investing in getting better and in sharing our expertise with this kind of niche audience that you want to develop with your business, that you can get to that point where they're coming to you rather than the other way around.
Yeah, and you're also
Mm.
working with people you enjoy working with as well. I think that's key.
Yes, like it just doesn't get any better than this. I sometimes like there are days I get up and I go, wow, I get to do this today. I mean, it's a pretty great life when you can use your expertise, you can charge premium prices for it, and you're serving a group of people that you really care about. Like,
Right. That's
yeah,
the sweet zone, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's what
That's
it's
the
all about.
goal.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
really wish that I know our audience would have loved to have asked you questions because I think that they would just eat this up, especially the people that we are connected with. And so, if they wanted to ask, any further questions or be able to get the book, I want to make sure that you're able to give us that information so we can also provide that to our audience as well.
Yeah, really the central repository for everything I do is my website. It's RochelleMoulton.com, MOULTON.com. You can get the book, you can listen to the podcast, you can email me if you have questions. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram, so you can find me there as well.
And she responds. That's how I got to her in 2009. I was like, "Hey, I'm a fangirl, I think, and can we talk?" And we did.
We did. Do you realize how long ago that was now? It's crazy.
I know. I
Yeah.
know. It is
Yeah.
crazy.
I mean, that's an amazing story of still being connected, just taking a risk as well and reaching out to this person as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take the risk.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today. Kate, any final questions that you want to ask Rochelle that you
Ye
think our audience might want to know?
Yeah, I would love to ask, and you kind of touched on some of this, but in hindsight, what would you tell your 20-year-old self if you could? What would be like the one piece of advice you would give yourself?
Oh, like inhabit your body and your mind fully. Like just embrace who you are and know that you are enough.
I love that.
Lovely.
I was
Yeah.
going to ask you if you had any final thoughts, but I'm not sure you can get any better than that.
No. Inhabit
Mic
your
drop.
body and your mind. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for
Thank you.
joining us today. And I know our audience will definitely get value out of this. And I appreciate you sharing your story. And then also, we look forward to connecting people potentially with you as well to be able to help them to position themselves to find and discover their point of view as well as being able to monetize that experience.
Well, thank you so much. And not just for this, but also for what you do. And I think that you're providing an important service for people. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Aw, thanks.
We also love what we do and
Yeah.
even though right now we make no money off of it, we just enjoy doing it. And so we've always said that as long as we're helping one person, that really is what it's about. So I appreciate that.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Hello. Thank you. I was muted there still, but I was thanking Lindsay profusely for her awesome producing skills here. So, a couple of comments came in already that I want to show. I do want you to see. I mean, there's some weird reflections on it, of course, but there's the poster. When we were playing the interview, I kind of figured out how to get it to stand up a little bit behind me. So, you could see I did post the link. So, Rochelle would be very willing to send it to you. It's older content on her site, but you can at least see the image and read all of the things that are on there. It's just super cute. It it reminds me of there's a author out there, Sark, I think is her name, and she is just very, very positive and has books that are like almost like filled with affirmations and very colorful. This poster is like a professional version of that, right? So it's a feel good. It's got a lot of feel good quotes and statements on it. And I think it really like reminds me of Rochelle. So I believe that Rochelle is a fantastic speaker. And what I love about the way she communicates, it's almost like she speaks in gold nuggets, right? So she makes these statements just in answering a question, but they're so deep and I want to marinate in them. The sentence she said about inhabit your body and mind fully, embrace who you are and know that you are enough. I mean, you saw her, I asked her a question and that just like came out of her mouth. It's like, gold. So that's why I want to marinate it. All right, the few comments I want to pull up here. So ones that are not me, going crazy over how much I love Rochelle. So the first one I want to pull up is from our dear friend Stephanie, who you are and who you want to serve. I love this too, Stephanie, and it's so key, right? I know that this is something that you have thought about too. Um, we all do things, to make money, right? We all have to make ends meet one way or another. But if you can reframe the way you are functioning in that career, what you need to do to make ends meet, if you can reframe it in like a steward type mindset or a servant leadership mindset, and really think about what you're serving, what you're giving out, even if it's something that others might think is of minor importance, and you're going to be setting yourself up to feel better each and every day as you're doing this, or at least in my opinion. So thank you so much, Stephanie, for contributing and making that little comment there. I love it. Sarah is totally stalking or not stalking, but she's totally here peeking in the background. Good morning, Sarah. Just woke up on vacation. Like, how awesome to be able to sleep in and super excited to see you again. It's been a weird week without you, but glad you're having lots of fun. I asked Sarah, so I posted in Facebook. I saw her post there, and I asked her, what is a time when you listened to your gut and made a jump into something? And she shared that it was with the position she's in right now. So she sought it out. She jumped. Good for you, Sarah. That's awesome. I love that. A curious comment is about some of what Rochelle was talking about in terms of her journey and her non-compete. So Carrie mentions, are non-competes really enforceable? Cases I've seen have been ruled in favor of employee as they must be able to make a living. That's my understanding too, Carrie. That in most cases they aren't really enforceable. I do think in some cases, like in the case that maybe Rochelle was involved in, where you have, some pretty high-end consulting dollars involved, I do think there's a little more risk on the employee side if you decide to break that non-compete. I think it's somewhat about privilege, but it's probably also about, ability to get all of the right players on your team to pursue a lawsuit or whatever. But in most cases, I feel as though if you really, can't make a living without breaking that non-compete, go ahead and just abide by it. There's no real point in burning bridges unless you seriously have to. So I think that's why Rochelle did what she did. And it totally worked in her favor anyway, because she stayed in contact in a real way, and she continued the relationship side rather than just the business side. So, but thanks, Carrie, for that little tidbit. And so, thank you guys. I'm seeing lots of people coming in to say how much they enjoyed it. I loved it too. She's got so much great content, so continue to go see that. Thanks for letting me know, Bruce. Stephanie thought she was brilliant. I did as well. I continue to. I love this. Yeah, being able to enable your specific abilities is a very important focus. And Sarah agreed with Bruce there, but yeah, it's if you're going to go into an entrepreneurial journey, or if you aren't, getting to know what you bring to the table, what is unique, what your point of view is, what your perspective is, what you truly bring to the table, that self-awareness gives you more confidence, but it also, sets you up for success because you are squarely in your sweet spot. Um, a blog that Rochelle has written, and I think resurfaces every once in a while, she brings it to the top, is she wrote a whole blog about the things she sucks at. Um, so as a way to kind of define, another way to define what her strengths are, she wrote a blog about, here are the things I suck at. Sometimes knowing what you are not good at is additional awareness that can, help you ensure that you are doing work that matters and that you are meant to be doing. Let's see. Bruce said, I remember a similar concept when I read Ralph Waldo Emerson's essay, Self-Reliance. Oh, I have not read that essay, but I feel that Rochelle had a ton of like, what is the word I wanted to say? She's resilient. It's similar to reliance, right? And like she can be self-reliant. She's also very resilient in the face of the adversity and being in a world where she didn't feel like she was everyone else. It takes some resilience to be able to embrace that. Carrie, she worked that requirement well. She sure did. She sure did. Thank you so much, Carrie. Thanks for being here today. It was a wonderful start to my day as well. I really appreciate it. Stephanie, I'm so excited that you're going to order the book. I love that. I was hoping you might, because I love what you do. I love what you do, but I also, I believe you have a passion and a desire to serve, and I hope you are able to get some additional good nuggets out of her stuff. So. Well, folks, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate all of the energy that you brought to the table. I know some of you are just kind of lurking in the back end, and that's great too. And for those of you that are going to watch this later, please let us know what you think as well. Please go ahead and visit Rochelle's site and absorb some of her content, marinate in it if you want to. That's been my favorite word for a few days now. All right. So with that, I will bid you adieu. Thanks, Stephanie. Stephanie came in and said, you're the best, Kate. Oh, I appreciate it. You guys are all, thanks. Thanks. That means a lot for my fellow badass. I appreciate you, Sarah, so much. And thank you. Thank you all for being here. So please let this fuel your Friday. Go on to have a kick-ass day. I'm glad that it has felt like a breath of fresh air for some of you. Feel inspired. Let this soak in. Have your kick-ass Friday. Have a great weekend. Can't wait to see you next week when we are discussing taking risks. So it's like, this is the primer where we're talking all about, Rochelle's story today. It's a great primer for our episode next week, which is going to be Sarah and I talking about risk taking. So please join us then. Tell your friends. Thank you so much and have a beautiful Friday.